to the first episode of All In NFL Sports Podcast. My name is Ethan.
And my name is Landon.
And today we will be giving Week 9 updates. Are you ready?
Going into the first game, we have the Titans vs. Steelers. The Steelers ended up on top 20-16, and the Steelers also had 217 total yards, while the Titans had 240. The Titans ended up having one turnover. Najee Harris and Deontay Johnson each scored one for the Steelers, while Derrick Henry scored one for the Titans.
Going into the second game, we had the Chiefs versus Dolphins. The Chiefs came on top with a 21-14 win. The Dolphins had a total of 292 yards, and the Chiefs only had a total of 267 yards. Both teams ended up having one turnover. And the people who scored for the Kansas City Chiefs were Rashee Rice, Jerick McKinnon, and a defensive touchdown, Brian Cook. People who scored for the Dolphins were Cedric Wilson and Raheem Mostert.
Third game, we have Bears vs. Saints. The score ended up being 24-17 Saints. The Bears had 368 total yards, while the Saints had 301. The Bears had 5 turnovers. Cole Kmet scored 2 for the Bears, and for the Saints, Chris Olave, Taysom Hill, and Juwan Johnson each scored 1. Taysom Hill actually set a record, becoming the first player to have 10 rushing, receiving, and passing touchdowns since Pro Hall of Famer Frank Clifford.
Going into the next game, we had a close game, the Falcons versus Vikings. The Vikings did end up coming on top 31-28. The Vikings had a total of 363 yards, while the Falcons had a total of 370. Both teams ended up having 2 turnovers. Josh Obbs scored 1 for the Vikings, Alexander Madison scored 1, Brandon Powell scored 1 for the Vikings, and another defensive touchdown, Byron Murphy scored 1 for the Vikings. For the Falcons, we had Tyler Algier scoring 1 and Jonnu Smith scoring 1.
In the game after that, we had Rams vs. Packers. The Packers blew them out 20-3. The Packers had 392 total yards, and the Rams had 187. Each team had 2 turnovers. Aaron Jones scored 1 for the Packers, and Luke Musgrave scored 1 for the Packers.
Going into the next game, we had another close game with the Commanders playing the Patriots. The Commanders did end up winning 20-17. The Commanders had a total of 432 yards, while the Patriots only had a total of 327 yards. The Commanders did end up having 2 turnovers, and the Patriots only ended up having 1. The people who scored for the Commanders were Brian Robinson Jr. and Jahan Dotson. The people who ended up scoring for the Patriots were Ramondre Stevenson and Hunter Henry.
An absolute blowout by the Ravens. The Ravens won 37-3. The Ravens had 515 yards, while the Seahawks had 151. Each team had 2 turnovers. Keaton Mitchell on the Ravens and Gus Edwards on the Ravens too had 2, and OBJ had 1 for the Ravens.
Going into the next game, we had a really close game with the Buccaneers playing the Texans. The Texans did end up winning 39-37. The Buccaneers had a total of 332 yards, and the Texans had a total of 496. Both teams ended up having 1 turnover. The people who scored for the Buccaneers were Rachaad White with 2 and Kay Don with 2. The people who ended up scoring for the Texans were Noah Brown with 1, Tank Dell with 2, Dalton Schultz with 1, and Nico Collins with 1. We actually had a rookie record breaker, C.J. Stroud, breaking the rookie passing record yard with 470 yards, and 5 touchdowns.
Another blowout, the Browns won 27-0. The Browns had 326 total yards, while the Cardinals only had 58. The Cardinals had 3 turnovers. On the Browns, Kareem Hunt had 1 touchdown, Amari Cooper had 1 touchdown, and David Njoku had 1 touchdown.
Then we had the Colts play the Panthers. The Colts did end up winning 20-13. The Colts had a total of 198 yards, and the Panthers had a total of 275 yards. The Colts did have 1 turnover, while the Panthers had 3 turnovers. Jonathan Taylor ended up scoring 1, and Kenny Moore ended up scoring 2 pick sixes. Then for the Panthers, we had DJ Shark with 1 touchdown.
Next, we have Giants vs. Raiders. The Raiders came up with an easy win, beating the Giants 30-6. The Raiders had 334 total yards, while the Giants had 277. The Giants had 2 turnovers, and the people who scored for the Raiders were Wan'Dale Robinson had 1, Josh Jacobs had 1, and Jacoby Myers had 1.
Going to the game of the week, we had the Eagles play the Cowboys. The Eagles did end up winning 20-23. The Cowboys had a total of 406 yards, while the Eagles only had a total of 292. The Cowboys did end up having 1 turnover in their loss. The people who scored for the Cowboys were Jake Ferguson with 1, Jalen Tolbert with 1, and Cavante Turpin with 1. And for the Eagles, we had Jalen Hurts with 1, Kenneth Gainwell with 1, A.J. Brown with 1, and Devontae Smith with 1.
In Sunday night's game, we had Bills vs. Bengals. The Bengals ended up on top 24-18. The Bengals had 397 yards, while the Bills had 317. The Bills had 2 turnovers. The people who scored on the Bills was Josh Allen with 1, Stephon Diggs with 1, Joe Mixon with 1, and then on the Bengals we have Joe Mixon, Drew Sample had 1, Irv Smith Jr. had 1.
Going to the final game of Week 9, we had the Chargers versus the Jets. The Chargers ended up winning 27-6. The Jets had a total of 270 yards, and the Chargers had a total of 191 yards. The Jets did end up having 3 turnovers. Austin Eckler scored 2 touchdowns, and Darius Davis got a punt return.
That will be it for today, guys. Thank you for watching us. We will give weekly updates every Friday. We are all in, and we're out.